Welcome everyone to the Kidlit Distancing Social. I'm Laura Backus, publisher of Children's Book Insider, and we are having our first social on a Tuesday evening, which will be our new permanent time slot. So I'm glad so many of you could join us tonight. And for those of you who are watching on replay, if Thursdays were tough for you, we're now doing Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you can join us. So if you are new to us and you want to get on our list of announcements, all the things we're doing, and also get a free ebook, you can go to writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet and sign up, and you will get a free ebook where we have compiled 30 years of information on getting started writing for kids into a free book. And then you'll get on our list and you'll be notified for our distancing socials and other great things that we do. And if you are not a subscriber to Children's Book Insider, but you would like to be, we have an offer just for our socialites, $5 a month. And this is our 30th year of publication for Children's Book Insider. And your subscription also includes access to our CBI Clubhouse membership site, where we have tons of information from the last 30 years. Lots of articles, videos. This is where we put the issues every month. If you miss it in the email, you can go there and download it. All sorts of great stuff. Our newsletter every month also features a special Above the Slush Pile submission opportunity, which we will be talking about later tonight, where an editor or an agent gives a special submission code just for our subscribers, and they can use it to leapfrog over the slush pile for a period of time with their submissions. So that's really awesome. So writeforkids.org/CBI is where you go to sign up. So where in the world am I? So, oh, you know what? Shoot, I turned off my green. I totally forgot about this. I was having trouble with my green screen, so I took it off. And my slide that you have to guess was going to be on my green screen. So there we go. So I can't even do the big, let's guess where I am. So I'm just going to have to show you this this week. It's really cool too. So what I was going to show you was, oh, thank you, Bev. Congratulations for 30 years of CBI. Thank you so much. So I had this picture of it was the picture on the left that was going to be on my green screen of this beautiful library, and you were going to have to guess where it was. Well, now you can see where it is. It's the Al Qarawin Library in Fez, Morocco. Oops, sorry, there's a typo in the word Morocco there. I know it only has one R. Anyway, this is very cool. The library is famously known for the fact that it was founded by a woman, Fatima al-Fehri, in 859, the year 859, turning it into a hub of intellectualism for hundreds of years and serving as the foundation for the Qarawin University, the oldest higher education institution in the world. So I just thought that was very, very cool. I wanted to share that with you. As you know, if you've been with us, we do a little literary landmark or some sort of literary related place every week. And it's a gorgeous building, and it was just reopened in 2016. They did a bunch of renovations on it, and it includes underground canals for security. So I guess if there's a problem, if they're being attacked or something, they can take all of these extremely valuable books they have and take them out through the underground canals. So I think that's very, very cool. Anyway, there you go. Sorry, I forgot my green screen. I had taken it off just a few minutes before I turned on the webinar. So I want to know where in the world you are. So take a picture of yourself in front of a literary landmark or somewhere that inspires your writing or doing some writing related activity, and email it to me with a brief description. and permission to use the photo and attach a photo as a JPEG. And I will feature you on a future Kidlit Distancing social because I love to see where you are and where you like to go to get inspired for your writing. So now we have our celebrate. This is the best part of my week every week. We have 3 great celebrates from our people, from you. Deborah Perry is celebrating having sent her manuscript to Beaming Books using the Above the Slush Pile submission code from the October children's book Insider, which I just mentioned. For 10 years, she worked on the project and saw it change as her writing improved. She writes, in the end, the revision process was intense. I truly understand what it means to carefully measure and weigh your words in a story. What a wonderful feeling to finally send it off. Well, congratulations, Deborah. Fingers crossed. I'm sure you'll let us know how that turns out. And congratulations to you for working on something for 10 years and really putting the time into it to make it as good as it could possibly be before sending it out. So that's awesome. Joan Ramirez had her book, Jamie's Autistic, Learning in a Special Way, produced as a read aloud video by Reading Pioneers Academy, and it's now available on YouTube. So that's great. And if you go to Reading Pioneers Academy on YouTube, it is on their YouTube channel as well. So congratulations, Joan. Now, this is kind of a cool one that I decided to share with you. So Peggy Wilmoth Carr wrote, my daughter surprised me with a copy of her first book. It is written to allay the fears of parents who are homeschooling for the first time. The book is called Mossy Log, Philosophy and Humor to Inspire Families Across the Homeschool Balancing Act by Liz Ganshert. And it helps families do things legally and successfully. And I think that's great. First of all, I wanted to celebrate being surprised by your daughter's first book. That's always a cool feeling as a parent. But this book looks really, really important and useful to a lot of people right now. So I hope Liz does well with it. So thank you, Peggy, for sharing that with us. So I want to hear your good news. Mail at writeforkids.org and put celebrate in the subject line. And we'll feature you on a future Kidlit Distancing social. And as you can see, it doesn't have to be a book publication. It can be any kind of writing related good news that we can help you celebrate. Okay, we're going to take a poll, and this poll is very important tonight. So I hope you all participate because this relates to what we're going to be talking about tonight with my guest. So, and you can vote as many times as you want in this poll. What is your biggest challenge toward getting your manuscript submission ready? Is it getting a firm grasp of the age group or genre that you're writing in, understanding what revision means and what to do, finding places to submit, finding people to read your manuscript and give feedback, putting together the submission packet, or knowing when it's ready? When can you let it go and send it out into the world? So I'll give you a minute to vote, and Lynn Marie and I are going to pay attention to this because it'll steer us toward the kinds of things that you might want to know tonight from Lynn Marie. I'm just taking notes here so I can see the results. You guys can't see it yet. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Done. And poll. Here's share results. So most of you knowing when your manuscript is ready to send out. And yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But a lot of it has to do with all the other things on this poll. Doing those. If you do those, you'll have more confidence that it's ready to send out. So thank you for answering that. I appreciate it. Okay, here's some links of interest I wanted to share, just a couple really cool things. Uh, there's a great post on the Nerdy Book Club blog called Showing Kids They Have a Voice and Can Use It by Lisa Schroeder. And she's talking about her new middle grade novel called Don't Judge Me, where she wove some sort of emotional residue from an incident from her own childhood, and then something she read about in a current event, and wove them together into this story, and really did it in a way so that kids could feel empowered when they read it. And it's, it's a fictional book. It's a novel. So I thought it was a really interesting post. And if you're doing that kind of thing with your own book, you might want to read it. So I gave you a direct link here, bit.ly/showing kids. Or you can just Google Nerdy Book Club. When that comes up, it'll be the most recent post. And then this is a fun thing. So Jane Yolen and Heidi Stemple, amazing authors. Most of you have heard of them, I'm sure. We'll be holding a free online reading and book discussion this Friday, November 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern about their newest book, I Am the Storm. And Heidi posted on Facebook that they're going to be talking about sort of how the book came to be. And I think that's always really cool when you hear these amazing, iconic authors talking about their process. So, sorry, you have to sign up to attend. It's free. I created a bit.ly link, bit.ly/I am the storm reading. You have to have the word reading. The word I am the storm was already taken. So bit.ly/I am the storm reading. You can sign up and attend that, and it'll be very interesting. Okay, now I get to introduce my guest. So Lynn Marie is the author of Hedgehog Goes to Kindergarten from Scholastic, Hedgehog's 100th Day of School, also from Scholastic. The star of the Christmas play with Beaming Books, Moldy Locks and the Three Scares by Sterling and Scholastic. So you'll have to talk about that, Lynn Marie. And Let's Eat, Mealtimes Around the World by from Beaming Books. And one more book coming out in the future. So 6 picture books. She's also the owner and administrator of the Picture Book Mechanic Critique Service, which you can find information on her website, literally lynnmarie.com. And she is also the owner administrator of Rate Your Story, which is a service where writers from all levels can submit their story to receive feedback from published authors who graciously volunteer their time to do this. And she's can talk a little bit about that tonight. And also Lynn Marie is a prized, valued contributor to Children's Book Insider, and she is responsible for those above the slush pile codes with our editor and agent spotlight interviews. So we thank her very much for that. And she told me that today is her 4th anniversary writing for CBI, or this month. So happy anniversary to us. So Lynn Marie, why don't you come on with me and we'll chat.
Hi, everybody.
Hey. Well, we're so happy you're here with us today, Lynn Marie. And you have really sort of embodied the, I think, the way an author needs to develop their career. You said you spent a lot of time early on educating yourself on how to write. And then you started submitting to magazines. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, sort of your early journey and your early education?
Sure. So some of my people are here and they know this story, but so we had gotten my parents got us computers like early on when people just started getting the home computers, and I was writing romantic comedies and screenplays, and then my computer crashed. So and I watch romantic comedies, so I felt like that's something I know. I was a new mom, and I had a little guy who had mild cerebral palsy, so he was kind of inactive. So after my computer crashed, I'm like, you know what? I want to write for him, but I haven't been a kid for a really long time. So, I just wanted to learn more about writing for children, children's literature. So I went back to college
Hmm.
and I took like all the courses. So I took short story. I took what else? Mythology. I took fantasy, folklore, and fairy tales, the Holocaust and children's. Like, if there was a children's course in this college, I took it. And I actually did just that. And, played around at home on my computer with my stories, but I didn't really submit. And then this is from like 1997 to 2001 that I, really, really, and I read picture books to my son too, because um, I just thought that was a part of it. And at my very first conference, Richard Peck said to me that if you're going to write in a certain genre, you should read in that genre and you should read 100 books. So I was like, I am on the right track, so that was really good. Um, it's always good to find validation. And the way you do that is through like chats like this and conferences. Anyway, so then I got into highlights in 2001. And that's when I really started like my journey with magazines. I thought that I should like lay the foundation for writing a book.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not saying that magazine writing is easy by any means, but it's definitely a good building block for getting a book published. And it's also a good measure,
Hmm.
and it's good practices. The thing with magazines is that there's less of them, so you can really study a certain magazine like Highlights Hello, say if you want to write for little kids. And then you get 10 issues and you pour over those and you read them over and over till you get a feel for the magazine. So targeting, you learn to target by doing that. And then you kind of get style and whatnot, and then you can start submitting and then hopefully um, get some success.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, so I started with the building blocks of a magazine, and I did pretty well, but I was one of those people who really, when they say that you should read over 10 highlights, um, I did 20, you
Right.
know. So
But
I
I think
just,
that's probably why you were so successful. I mean, you sold quite a few pieces to magazines, and I imagine that really honed your skills as a writer so that when you did submit your first picture book sale was to Scholastic, which
mhm.
is a big five publisher. That's pretty amazing for your first book. Do you think that all your magazine writing kind of helped prepare you for that as a writer?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
It also taught, so something else that you learn from magazines, and it's more manageable, like, the book, there's so many publishers and they have so many books and such big backlist. Um, but I was able to identify like topics they hadn't covered.
Hmm.
So that's actually how I got into Scholastic, is I noticed that they hadn't had a school bus book.
Hmm.
So, and if you think like, so it's a business, and you really have to treat it like a business and approach it like a business and say, okay, I know that they have certain things that they need to do. Scholastic is very school based. And of course they want a back to school book, usually with, they'll do a couple, usually with the school bus, but they hadn't had one. So I'm like, I have a story that would kind of lend towards that. So basically I studied some Scholastic books and I retooled my story, which was on a school bus, which I knew that they didn't have one in the flyer, their book club flyer. And then I sent it in, and 4 weeks later they called.
Wow. Wow. That's really fast.
Well, that was fast, but that was 2010 and I'd been writing since
Sure.
1997.
Well, no, I mean, the submission part was fast
Yes,
because
yes, yes,
the
yes, yes.
preparation up to that obviously took
I,
quite a while.
it was, but see, when you do the work and
Mhm,
don't worry about the, just do the work you need to do to get the result, I think things like that will happen to you
mhm. I
because I
totally
put in
agree.
a lot of years.
Mhm. Right, right. I totally agree. So you taught, so you did the work to lay the groundwork to learn what a children's book is, to really learn the form of a picture book. You really studied the writing of it, worked hard on developing your own skills. Um, what in that arc of learning did you learn about revision? That's so crucial.
Well,
It's a big question.
revision's like my favorite part,
Mhm.
as you know. Um, what did I learn about revision? Well, I learned a lot about research. Like if I got a book on a certain topic, I would get out all the books from the library on that topic. And look like I've smeared lipstick. Um, and I would compare my work to that, and I would make sure it was better. And so that was one thing that you do. I also would read it aloud, see if
Mhm.
it flowed,
Mhm.
um, and see if it was boring, see if the language was good. I mean, everything that I did, like learning how to write for magazines and engage the reader, that all carried over. So, um, revision is like to me like getting like a piece of clay. Like, so your idea, you get your idea all out and you get it on paper, and it's like a lump of clay, really, and then you have to like pick it apart and just tool it, and it becomes like more and more beautiful the more that you focus on it and chip away the things that don't work. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. You'll all have to hear that. Um, so when you are studying, and I thought it's very interesting, you said you got every book you could on the same sort of topic as what you were writing about, and saw how you could make yours different, really work to make yours better. So when you're analyzing published books, what kinds of things do you look at, so that you can understand how they were written and then transfer that knowledge to your own book, but then improve upon it?
Well, let me clarify because I said the same topic, but I didn't exactly mean that. So my goal would be always for each book I'm working on to get 100 books that are
Mhm.
similar. And it might be like, say if it was an armadillo character, I would get every book I could that had armadillos as main characters. Then if it was about friendship, I would get as many books as I could that were in the last 2 3 years on friendship. If it was about traveling to another country too, then it would have that. So it would be a combination of books.
Mhm.
um, and then I would look at them for basically how close they were to my story, um, who the publisher was. So if they were very, very close to my story in the last 2 years, that's probably not a good place to submit. If they
Mhm.
were similar in style, but not quite the same, then that would be on a maybe list. So like it helps you for targeting and marketing. So that's one thing. Then I would also I I would type out these books. Oh my gosh, I was like, so I typed out everything. I call them picture book skeletons, and I typed them, and I was like crazy for typing out picture book skeletons. I don't do it anymore, but I have my like more than my fair share. I learned about rhythm of language. I learned when the line breaks. I learned when the page breaks. I learned about transitions. Um, there's so much to be learned. I learned, is a tone effective? Is it not effective? Um, it's just endless. Like sometimes I would have to be there to tell you all that I learned from a book,
Mhm.
but it's like you if you open your eyes and open your ears and listen and really focus, there's so much a book can tell you.
Oh, yeah. And it's that typing out the text, especially for the picture books, but I
Mhm.
think this can work with novels too, even if you just type out a chapter or 2.
Yeah,
Um,
I would recommend that if you have a problem with beginnings,
mhm,
perhaps like to type out all the beginnings or middles, like find a
mm,
chapter that's very transitional and type out the whole chapter. It's not the rest of your life. And
right.
really, see what choices that author made and try to figure out why did that author choose that. Usually it's very deliberate. And sometimes it's so subtle that until you focus on it, you don't even notice it.
Right. And when you see, especially with a picture book, when you see the text typed out on the page or on your screen, people always ask me, well, how does the illustrator know what to draw if I don't put illustration details in there? But when you just see the words, you will see that the words imply certain images without stating what the image should look like. And an illustrator can read that and imagine, but you really have to separate the words and the pictures to get a sense of how the author did that, I think, and really look
Yes,
at it as
I
an image.
do think that's important. When I do a book chat on Sunday nights from 6:30 to 8, and a lot of times people will comment on the pictures, and I'll be like, that wasn't there. Like when we're talking about the text, that wasn't. You can't like figure in what the pictures are adding. But I do have a little tip to add. Um, I did go to SCBWI Spain with Arthur Levine and David Fickling of David Fickling Books. And Arthur Levine, I became very friendly with him. He says, as far as art notes and things, sometimes you put things in the text that will be taken out later to convey the picture.
Mhm,
I don't know if
mhm,
that helps anybody,
mhm.
but if you could put it in the text and it flows and you read it and it sounds good, when the picture's there, they might take it out.
They might take it out, yeah,
Right, but
yeah.
if it needs to be in there to convey like what's going on or the mood or whatever, sometimes you could have it in the text. And you can have art notes too, but as a general rule, or not as a general rule, but it just happens that people put way too many art notes.
Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sort of rule of thumb I've heard from most agents and editors is if it's something that has to happen in a picture that is in no way conveyed through the text, you could put an art note in. Sometimes there's a page turn and there's like some surprise that's just in the
Mm-hmm.
illustration, but it's important to the plot. You can put an art note. But you can't describe, this character needs to be wearing a blue shirt and have brown
Yeah,
hair
no.
and da, 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 da. you know, that's up to the illustrator. So,
So an example of where you would need that, if
mhm,
you're well versed in like fairy tale colors, like the yellow wallpaper, it's yellow for a reason. Little Red
mm,
Riding Hood has a red cloak for a reason. So um if it's part of the motif that it has to be a certain color, you could put that because it's essential.
mhm,
But if you're just saying, I like the color purple, or, even
right,
my character likes purple, but doesn't tie into the plot, then you wouldn't do it.
yeah. Or I want this character to look like my daughter. Here's a picture of
Oh,
her.
yeah, that's another one.
So, when you are revising your work, so you've got your first draft or, third draft or fifth draft, whatever you kind of feel like you've got the story down where you want it to be, but now you're really going to go through and start polishing and revising and looking at it, every word, making sure it's perfect. Do you have any kind of system that you go through where you look at one thing first and then the next, or does it depend on the story?
It depends. I would say it's like children, they're all different.
Mm.
There's a number of ways. Like if you're really having trouble, you should start at the end and kind of read it backwards.
That's
That's a little bit of the hard work, but it like every word has to count, and
Mhm.
you get like really like kind of like, okay, like I have to do this right and I don't want extra stuff when you're doing it backwards. So,
Yeah.
that's something that's only effective for some people, but it's worth a try.
Mhm.
Another thing I do is I always read it aloud.
Mhm.
If I read it aloud and I come to something that's just like a mess and I just like can't get through it for whatever reason, I'll copy and paste that paragraph into like a blank screen, and then I will just focus on that and I will just work with that until I could get it where I could put it back in like a puzzle piece.
Mhm.
Um I do find for me, and it's different for everybody, so like there's a lot of advice going back and forth here. Um the one that I want to say is essential is read the books,
Mhm.
totally essential, but like the rest of this stuff you should try, but you need to do something, like you need to find your way and not just say, I'm going to take the easy revision route. It's
Sure.
not going to pay off. Um but um i so I'll go through and I'll read it, and you'll find you stumble when sentences are too long. They should be like 4 to 8 words for on the average for picture books, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, especially to convey like emotion. It might be a little more staccato. But so you'll find long sentences, you'll find words that maybe are not going to be good to be read aloud.
Right.
um that would be one pass. Another pass would be to, can a kid understand this? What
Mhm.
is this going to say to a kid? I see so many manuscripts where they have such clever ideas and clever sentences, but I'm like, this doesn't mean anything to a kid, you
Right.
know?
Right. Because
So,
your average picture book reader is really about 4 to 6 years old would be sort of average, and then we have the
yes.
younger picture books and some that are slightly older. But think about think about a 5-year-old, and they don't think in big abstract terms, and
No.
they don't have a lot of references. If people use um, funny turns of phrase that are sort of part of our lexicon, but as adults, or
Right.
they make a joke that has a more adult reference to
Hmm.
it. Kid's not going to get it. Yeah, so those are definitely things to look
Yeah.
for.
So that's one whole pass, like that, just for is there a kid door into the story? Is there kid friendly language and kid friendly ideas that the kids will follow?
Mhm.
And then, is there kid takeaway value at the end?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and each manuscript is different. So, like, I kind of do whatever it needs.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I guess if you don't have all the training, it's a little bit more challenging
Right.
to really know. And I see that I was kind of happy that everyone put that they didn't know when their manuscript was ready, because I feel like that's very honest.
Yes, it is. And I think that's something that even experienced authors struggle with. It doesn't just suddenly turn a different color when it's ready and you go, okay, now I can send it out.
I
Um,
don't know about that. To be honest, I feel like you'll know. Like when
yeah.
it's really, really ready, you'll know. So the sequel to Hedgehog Goes to Kindergarten was 3 drafts.
Hmm.
Not that I'm so great. So I had established characters, right?
Hmm.
And I had sold to them, and so I kind of knew, and I work with that editor, so I kind of knew what to do.
Hmm.
Um and I did 3 drafts, and I sent it in and it sold. It sat for a year and a half, but so how the first one was 4 weeks, the second one was a year and a half, and the funniest thing is that I was like, oh, even though they asked for it, the sequel, I'm like, I guess they didn't like it. And I'm like, I probably should just let it go. But a year and a half, I moved to Florida and everything in this. And I'm like, should I follow up on it? And I'm like, I don't want to be that person bugging the editor. But then I said, well, they did ask for it. So I followed up like a year later, and the guy was like, oh, that manuscript. He's like, thank goodness you got in touch with me. He goes, yeah, there's some red tape I was supposed to be cutting through, but yeah, we're gonna do that. So I was like,
Whoa.
gosh. So, and let me tell you about Scholastic. There's a different editor every week. So if I hadn't caught him at that moment, he actually left before like after the contract, but before anything happened with the book. So
Wow.
it probably would have died, because
Yeah.
I have other manuscripts that died their death at Scholastic with the editor that wanted to acquire them.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, good thing you called for sure.
I know.
So in your well, let me just make this one point before we move on to your critique service. Um, Especially with picture books, but in any book, every word has to count and has to be there for a reason. Do you, after you finish your manuscript, do you set it aside for a certain amount of time before going back and starting to look at it
Well, that's
with
a
flaws?
great question, because
Mhm.
I do that, and I think so many people don't. Like when they shoot manuscripts back to me, like I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And I'm like, only because it's like a stew.
Yeah,
You have to let it simmer, and you have to also get distance from it.
yeah.
I think my best revisions are when I put something away for like a couple weeks and then go back to it, and then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is really good."
But then you'll also see those words that don't belong because it's
You
it's
do.
fresh. You haven't just been reading it for 6 hours in your last revision.
Yeah, where you can like
Yeah,
hear it in your head and you're
yeah,
not really focusing. Like one
right.
one of my things is prepositions and the and pronouns. Like a lot of times they're unnecessary. So I like weed out. I look at it like a garden. Like my story is a garden, and I want all the pretty flowers to stand out. So I get the like all the weeds out of it. Um, I feel like approaching it in that way really helps too. Instead of being in love with all your words, like say, oh, I know that a lot of the words in this are weeds, and I'm gonna find them and take them out, and then the thing just like grows like that
Mhm,
when you get rid of the junk. So but I do think it's hard to be objective and tough on yourself, but this is a business, and
mhm,
if you really want to be an author, that I think that you have to approach it like a business and approach it objectively.
mhm, mhm. Absolutely. So with your critique service, the picture book mechanic, I'm sure that you see certain mistakes that a lot of people make when they send you manuscripts. Or I'm assuming, are there some sort of common mistakes that you see
There
across the
are
board?
for sure.
Mhm,
What well, there's a number, and a lot of people make them. First of all, most of the people I can tell do not read picture books.
hmm,
I could tell by the way they speak in the picture book, the length of the words, the way they format it, the topic, like um so that's, I would say, a common mistake is writing and submitting something like that you haven't done the work of reading picture books. So that would be like one very common one. Um Another one is adult point of view.
mhm,
I get a lot. Um I think that goes along with like you have a story to tell and you're an adult. But you really have to approach it differently. I tell people to put like a baseball cap on or a beanie cap or just whatever works. Like now you're a kid. you know, and think of it like a kid. Forget you're an adult.
Right. Even if it's an adult character, they have to have that child worldview.
Childlike characteristics.
Right. So
You
you're
know, like a
writing, oh, I'm sorry,
no,
continue.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say, you're not writing down to the reader, you're writing to the reader, you're eye to eye with the reader, as opposed to being an adult kind of telling the story to a child.
Exactly. It really helps your perspective to like be like, I'm a child now. Like I can look at things two ways. I'll go, as an adult I really like this, but as a child I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You have to kind of get like that. So I'm like, you can put a hat on, take it off, put it, you know, whatever, change hats, do whatever you got to do um to find that child door in. Then another big one, and as part of my service, I do give a picture book skeleton to help with this that I kind of concocted. Um, but traditional story structure works for a reason,
Mhm.
you know, and I get so many people that are like, well, my story is not traditional and they haven't been published and they don't understand the structure to veer from it.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's a really big mistake. And I feel like that they should try to hang their story idea over a structure so it stands up,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Instead of falls flat, which of course
Right.
they probably don't think it does. But um, I do recommend at least trying it with the structure. And then it's like Jenga. If you could take out different things and it still stands up,
Mhm.
then, you know, more power to you. But people like to hear a traditional structure, especially kids,
Mhm.
you know.
So
It's
when you say structure, sort of for those people who might not know, are you specifically talking about 3 act structure or a hero's journey structure, or is there a certain type of structure you're talking about?
well, I love those structures, but right now I'm just talking about the common structure of a character with a flaw encounters a problem that he has motivation and stakes in solving, and then 3 attempts to solve it, um, each with a failing better, escalating to fail better each time. Then a deep dark moment, which kind of uh, lens from the hero's journey, and then the satisfying resolution. I think that's like the most common and simplest way to put it.
Mhm. Right. And if you analyze 100 children's picture books, you will see that. And so even if you don't quite understand what Lynn Marie's talking about, if you really break down what happens in the beginning and then what happens that gets the plot moving, there's usually an inciting incident, we call it, or something where suddenly the character's faced with something they have to deal with in some way. Um, how does that happen in a picture book? Usually in just a few words. And then what happens next? So you can break it down as you
Mhm.
read these books and come up with your own sort of skeleton.
Well,
Um,
that's where typing up those story
mhm,
skeletons works too. Or get the book, get post-its, and mark off those things.
right.
Usually the problem will occur by the third spread, sometimes on the first spread,
Mhm,
right?
right.
Um, and I always say there's like there's more than 3 ways, but there's 3 major common ways into a story where you set up the ordinary world, or
Mhm,
you set up the ordinary world right away with a crack in it that you know something's going to happen, or it's an inciting event. And if your beginning is weak, I always suggest write all 3, you know, with your story and character in mind, and then see which one of those 3 works the best, and then build on that and improve on
right.
that.
Right. Great. Great. So if someone is using a critique service or rate your story, and I'm going to have you talk about that in a second, explain
Mhm.
to people what that is. Should they try to do as much of their own work up front on this revision before then paying
Yes, that's such
for
a, oh
them?
my gosh, it's such a good question. So, I'm a person and my time's a little valuable too. And like I can't rewrite it for you. I can't spend 5 hours on it. So if I'm gonna spend like 2 hours on your manuscript, wouldn't it be good if I was helping you to take it to the next level rather than weeding out weak words for you? Or helping you with the direction of your plot rather than saying your character does nothing to move the story forward. Like whatever whatever you can do, to take it to where you can take it, um is better. It helps me not make my job easier, but now we're at a higher level of digging
Mhm,
into your story and bringing it higher than if I was like doing like all this grunt work that you
mhm,
could do if you read picture books, if you typed out picture book skeletons and then read it aloud and saw that it was like somewhat in the running. We're
mhm.
not perfect and no one's going to send me a perfect manuscript, but I just noticed the people I work with repeat, they see, they're like, "Oh, I should have took care of that because I saw that after I got the weeds out,
Mhm.
how we were both able to focus
Right.
on,
Yeah.
bringing it up several levels where it needs to go." And I've had people sell that once we got to a certain level, we were able to make the jump to get it where it could sell. But we did waste some revisions with just like really wading through things.
Mhm. Right. And so if that's the level you're at and you pay someone to do that for you or to help you through that, you're still going to have to get another critique after that, at least one
Well,
to
that's an
compare.
important thing. Getting the one critique, especially when I don't say it's like ready to go out, you
Mhm.
should come back with the revision so that I can, let you know how you did with it and see if you understood it and also bring it closer. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I see a lot of people that get one revision and then I think they submit.
Right. And the thing is, I know because I've done hundreds of critiques myself, and I know that you can point things out to people. You can give them suggestions for revisions. You can even show them, you can write little excerpts here and there to demonstrate what you're talking about. But you don't know if they actually executed it or
Right.
understood what you were getting at unless you see the, the result. And this, I had the same thing happen. I would say 70% of my clients got one critique and then were gone, or sent me a completely different manuscript. And I always wondered, did they actually accomplish the changes that I had hoped they could make
Yeah,
or not?
me too.
You know?
Especially when it's not close. Like
Yep.
sometimes I'd be like, you don't have to send that back. Like it
Yes.
has like these little like just
Yeah.
there's those people too.
Sure.
But I do want to point out something that I don't think people consider is if you submit something that's not ready, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot and losing a chance.
Absolutely.
So it really, behooves you to wait until it's ready.
Hmm. And talk about our above the slush codes with Children's Book Insider, which you are work so hard to get for us. And these are wonderful opportunities. But we always say, and there's a little column that I put at the end of every article that says this, if it's not ready, if you haven't gone through the revision process, it doesn't matter how valuable this submission code is. If you use it when you're not ready,
Right.
you're you're giving up, because this editor might be someone you meet a year from now at a conference who you want to submit to, and they might remember that manuscript that you sent them a year ago that was so not ready to be submitted. So you don't want to, like you said, shoot yourself in the foot, but I know it's hard. How, as a writer, you know, you get all excited, you see this opportunity. How do you stop yourself from
Well,
going?
I think that's where reading also comes in. Like you have to really be objective and be like, mine's not quite, at the bar.
Mhm.
Or in a critique group, a trusted critique group. If you have a really
Right.
good critique group, that's invaluable. But I can tell you a lot of my clients, I've had to say, stop listening to your critique group too,
Hmm.
because they're like just fiddling,
Yeah.
constantly fiddling.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, stop. Like, you have to focus on the plot, not this one said this phrase with, like,
Right.
yeah. But rate your story is actually good for that. The thing is that they're only open for membership like from now to maybe January if we don't fill up, and we're actually filling up. It costs you get one contest entry, so it costs literally like $8 and something for a rating and feedback. Um to me, so the reason I love Rate Your Story and the reason they gave it to me to take over was because I was a member, and I like put all my manuscripts through there to see, if I was right where I thought it would come in, and I would always guess. Like, I would rate it myself in my head, and then I would send it off and see if I got back something similar. But that's like kind of an inexpensive way to get an idea if you really don't know. And they have speed passes, which are more costly, $25 each, if you do it like one time. So like the membership is kind of a better deal, and you get 18.
Yeah.
But I'm not even saying that for myself to boost my business. I'm saying it because that service is like essential,
Mhm. So
you
what
know.
kind of feedback do you get? Like, how detailed is it?
Um, That can vary between judges, and basically, as being the owner now, if you get feedback that you think is way too slight, you would just email me and I would probably read it myself. Unless I really agree and said, maybe it's not that it was slight, maybe it's that you didn't like the feedback,
Mm.
that would be
Yeah.
something else. But yeah, I'm pretty receptive to if anybody doesn't, feel that they got their right amount of feedback. And we have like 25 judges now. I can't be in control of every feedback that everybody gives, but I am happy to spot check it if someone's unhappy.
Mhm.
You can also submit manuscripts up to 3 times though.
So this is a great service if you feel you've revised it as much as you can, you've had critiques, etc., and you just want that extra little pair of eyes on it before you submit to let you know if it's ready. I mean, something like Rate Your Story would be great for that.
Right. It's perfect for that, and I think
Mhm.
people need it. And I understand about investing money into your business, but you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe it's a business. I invested, I can't even tell you, I went to highlights Chautauqua like 5 times. I went to like so many SCBWI conferences. Like, I just, because I knew I was doing the work, and I believed in myself, and I knew it was going to pay off. So I'm like, this is essential for my career, to meet the people and that I'm actually going to sell books to one day, to learn more, to make the connections for
Mhm.
selling books at,
Mhm.
wherever conference that, there's all kinds of connections to be made. We're not going to speak about that, but my
Right.
point is that they need to invest in themselves. And just like with Children's Book Insider, which I am always, my clients who are here will tell you that I'm always like saying that you should be a member of Children's Book Insider. You need to read those articles. You need to glean whatever you can from that issue. Um, that's part of your journey, and your narrative arc of becoming a published author.
Mhm.
So,
No,
and
I
that
agree.
includes investing in yourself.
Yes, yes. And, there are big investments and smaller investments that we all can make. And I think Rate Your Story is a great deal for the amount of money that it costs. And then something like going to a conference is a big investment, especially if
Right. So, it's a really good alternative too. And we do full critiques now also because
Mhm.
there are people who submit like their manuscript like 3 times for feedback and like they just need more.
Mhm.
So I'm responsive to that. So I'd be like, now I say, well, why don't you try the full critique where we'll comb through the whole thing for
Mhm.
you?
Mhm.
Because I really do want to help people. I have clients that are here. I like love tinkering with other people's manuscripts.
Okay, we're going to get to some questions here.
Oh,
A quick one for you. Is Rate Your Story open to all genres, like middle grade fiction, or is it more picture book focused?
it's definitely open to all genres, and we have judges in all the genres. But I would say we get like 80 something% picture book people
Okay,
submitting.
great. And Kara asked me if CBI, if there's a yearly subscription instead of month to month. Yes, there is. And if
Yes.
anybody's interested in that, it is less if you sign up for a year, and you have access to our back issue archive if you sign up for a year.
Yes, and I want to tell you that I was an insider since you've been doing it for 30 years, and
Mhm.
I've gotten it from like 1997.
Whoa. Whoa. So you're one of our
Well, to
early
be
fans.
honest, that's how I got some of my magazine credits.
Cool. The system works. I love it. So anyway, if someone if you're interested in the yearly, just send me an email to that mail at writeforkids.org, and we will send you the details for to buy a year at a time. And the nice thing is then you do have access to 5 years worth of back issues. So
Yes, which I would definitely read too.
yeah. So Alice asked, can you discuss your writing for magazines in a bit more detail? How did you select which magazines to go with? Well, you talked about studying the magazines and really examining them. How did you sort of zero in on which ones you were even going to start looking at?
Well, I started with highlights, so that was kind of easy. I had the connections there.
Oh,
So,
from going to the conference, the highlights Chautauqua
right. But
conference. Okay.
you know, I knew that, you can only really sell one thing to one person at one time, you know.
Mhm.
So then I started looking at the bug magazines and I got subscriptions. I'm a studier, so I got subscriptions and I let them pile up, and then I studied them. So I sold to many of the bug magazines too.
By bug magazines, you mean cricket,
Oh,
spider,
sorry.
cicada, ladybug, baby bug. That's a whole group of magazines that are, yeah,
Harris Publications.
named after bugs, the bug magazines.
Yeah. And I also book reviewed. So like I was very enterprising that I would I did this when they used to pay like $50 and $75 for a review. It was before like everybody became a book reviewer.
Hmm.
Um, so I did that too, and I got, clips with that. Um, I think so. Writer's Journal. I don't know if I found out about Writer's Journal from Children's Book Insider, but I might have. Um, when I learned about that, I read that and then I submitted an article. I wrote for SCBWI magazine. They pay whatever the bulletin. I just was reading all the things, and um, I would see like somebody wanted something and then I would get issues of it and then I would study it and write down ideas I came up with. That's the other thing, by studying those, I think I said this though, that you see things that they didn't cover.
Mhm. Right. It's a good way to know. And then that's a much better chance of selling that article because you can point that out in your cover letter, that I've studied 10 years worth of back issues and you didn't cover.
Yeah.
So, um, I've had a couple questions about when
Well,
you
was that
submitted.
good for the magazine? Does that person, um,
I think so. We'll find out.
I hope so.
You can let us know, Kara, but that was a great answer, I thought. um, Scholastic requires agents now. When you submitted to Scholastic, and this was
Oh,
back like in
ugh.
like 10, 11 years ago or so when you submitted Hedgehog.
Yes, I
Uh,
hate to answer this question, but I am honest.
mhm.
So I didn't have an agent. I
Right. I
just
was
sent
going to
it
say, I
in.
didn't think you did. Um, I'm
I
not
t-
sure if they required agents that long ago, or if they were still
they
taking.
did.
They did. Okay.
I wouldn't recommend this at all. I really would hope that nobody would do this ever. I I don't know if it's because I don't want to say I was cocky because I just knew it was right. Like I just knew like 100% that it was right. Just like the last book I sold, I sent to one publisher and I knew it was right for them and it sold. Sometimes it like the stars line up. And this is what you get from reading Children's Book
Mhm.
Insider, from reading like thousands, I read thousands of books a year, from being in the community, from writing and revising. Certain things you start to know, and I just knew this book was for them and
Mhm.
I sent it.
Sometimes it pays to make your own rules.
Yeah, but I don't I really hate to say that in a group,
I
but
think that, and I think it's gotten more so now where if they are closed to submissions, they are not even going to, and everything's coming through email. So it's very easy to just delete the email.
well,
Uh,
I'll tell you something else. I think the mark, or the slush coming in was of course huge, but I think now it's worse. I also think if you remember back to like 1997 to 2000 when I started, um, people would not submit something that wasn't ready like they will now. Like we all did the work. Like we all was like, oh, you have to do this, then we're gonna do this. Like,
right.
of course you can't say across the board about anyone, but now it's just gotten so loose that everybody knows everything about everything. Everybody has a blog, everybody submits.
Mhm.
There's not, it was
Right.
different then.
Well, and I really feel part of the reason for this, because I was an agent back then too, and
Right.
we submitted everything in hard copy. We went to the copy shop. We made copies of the manuscripts. We put them all in envelopes with postage on them and a self-addressed stamped envelope for return. You had to do a cover letter. It was a lot of work just to get one submission in the mail. And so you did think a little more carefully
Yes.
about where it was going, and it costs you money to print out each copy of your manuscript, especially if you had a novel. My gosh, that was expensive to even do 5 copies of that.
Right.
So I think that forced people to be more careful about what they were sending out,
Exactly. I
and
think
it's
so
just so
too.
easy now. Yeah, but getting back to our above the slush codes and
Oh,
just any other
sorry.
submission opportunity, that's the reason so many places are closed to unsolicited submissions, because
Yes.
they are just buried. And I have gotten this statistic from more than one editor, 97% of the submissions they get, not publishable. They pass immediately. They don't even read past the first couple pages because they can tell right away it's not worth their time to even read the whole thing. So, of course, if you are getting hundreds or thousands of manuscripts a month, which some of these big publishers do, and 97% of them are unpublishable, why would you take any? Why wouldn't you just say the agents are going to be the first gatekeeper? They're going to filter And the ones that they think are the best,
Yeah,
those are
that's
the
what's
ones you want to see.
happening.
And so the reason I bring this up is when there is a submission opportunity, either through our newsletter or you go to a conference and an editor says, anybody who's at this conference can submit to me, honor it and make it your best work, because it's up to everybody to do that so that these opportunities stay open, because it really is a privilege to have this opportunity. And I appreciate publishers that always have an open submission policy because they believe in it and they want to find new authors. But from a business standpoint, it's bad business. I mean, if you were in any other business and spending hours and hours of your time on something that you knew would never make you any money,
Right.
why would you do it? So remember, this is a business. And I think if we all approach what we put in the mail or email submitting as a business proposal, not, I mean, it's a creative thing that you have made, but when you send it out, it becomes a business proposal that you are
Exactly.
submitting. And think of it that way. And then it will, it will, it will be your best work, because it's like going on an interview. You're going to dress your best. You're going to get your resume in good shape. You're not just going to show up in your sweatpants and go, well, I'm pretty good at this. So,
Well, yeah, and I'll add something. So I studied for many years and then started writing the magazine articles. So I had an idea,
mhm,
or I began to cultivate an idea of what was good and things. So my manuscripts that I was first writing, they never went anywhere. Like
right.
they shouldn't. But you don't get the perception um until a little later. So, you know, I didn't submit. Like I would say for 5 years, I didn't really submit
Mhm,
children's books.
mhm,
And I would so when I finally did, I had the perception and objectivity to say, okay, like this is good, you
mhm,
know.
mhm.
I don't think you really want to submit your first stories like
Yeah,
oh, I have a story and I'm going to submit it, like, you know, it sounds really good,
right.
but I think you should put it down and then write like 5 more stories and then go back to it, and
Mm,
then maybe the goal would be to have 3 good ones, but this is like a process over time.
right, right.
Yeah.
It is, it is. And if you're submitting picture books, particularly to an agent, they want to see more than one manuscript anyway. I mean, you might submit one manuscript
Right, and
for
then they'll
fun.
ask, sorry, I was
Yeah,
moving. And then they'll ask for like 5 more, sometimes three to 5 more or
3, 5 more.
something.
So you got to have all those manuscripts ready. And
But it's
yeah,
that first one has to still, you know,
still has to be like, it's got to grab them. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's get to some more questions here. We got a lot of questions and I don't want to keep you forever, but I'll pick some good ones here. Let's see. This is an interesting question. Is there a picture book market for 6 to 11-year-olds? What would the word count be? Now, there are some picture books skewing older, primarily nonfiction. Have
Yep.
you noticed fiction skewing older as well with the picture books?
Not really, but I would say from time to time you see one that skews a little older, but it's usually, like you said, nonfiction. And I served on Sybil's. I did the elementary and middle grade nonfiction. So there was definitely a blurring there.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, one year I did that. It's hard because I love fiction so much, but I do love nonfiction, but it was hard to be away from fiction, but I did do it one year. And there were definitely older picture books that were like STEM.
Mhm.
STEM would be another one. So STEM or a biography.
Right. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. Sometimes they add the A in there for
Right,
art,
for art.
STEAM. And that's what a lot of schools are looking for, books that have those concepts in that they can use in the classroom. And so, yes, that 6 to 11 is tough with fiction because those kids are reading chapter books as well, and that's kind of, they're being, publishers are thinking of that audience more for chapter books, especially like once you get to 8 to 11. That doesn't mean they don't still like picture books, but I think that's one of those things. The market is constantly shifting. And so reading current book reviews, like in Publishers Weekly and the Children's Bookshelf that you could subscribe to for free, I think is a really good way of kind of keeping track of what's happening now, what's coming out now, as far as things like, are picture books getting older? Are publishers starting to do that? You know, and in reading reviews, you really saw the evolution of the graphic novel. It went from young adult down to middle grade to chapter book.
Yeah.
And now we have easy readers in graphic novel format. And so it's interesting to see these developments, and just from scanning the book reviews, you'll get a good sense of that. Sheila asks, can you talk about getting advice from a professional and not just your critique group to know when your manuscript is ready for submission? So we talked about, you know, maybe using a paid critique service or whatever. Is there a point, like if, and I think you did kind of touch on this, where you feel you've gotten everything you can out of your critique group and you just need to get another pair of eyes on the manuscript?
There's a lot of situations because first of all, they're your friends.
Mhm.
um, some of you who've gotten critiques from me know that I'm very honest. I'm very honest because I care. But if you don't want to hear the truth, then I'm probably not the best one for you. Um, and my name, the picture book mechanic, is because I like roll up my sleeves and I look for what's broke and try to find ways to fix it. I don't stand around and admire the color of your car and go, it's so beautiful. You know, I'm like, I want to make this go, and when it starts to go, then we're gonna sit and we're gonna say all the good things about it from the sidelines. But so I do think that, you know, getting advice sometimes from friends who are not professionals, first of all, they're your friends. They're not gonna jeopardize that, you know. You know, I get a lot of people say, oh, you know, my critique groups, they love this and said it was great. And I agree with everything you said. And I can see it now. Now that you pointed it
Mhm.
out, I could see this is what's broke with my manuscript. And I could also see how to fix it. But it took for me to point that out. And they weren't getting that from their critique group. That happens so often.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to kind of develop that gut instinct. And again, if you've read a lot of books and your critique group says, yeah, this is ready, and there's just still something nagging at you that, like, I've read 100 books over here and I just don't know if mine yet stacks up. Can I see it on the shelf next to these books? And getting that fresh opinion from someone who is not your friend, and will be honest, is probably a good idea in those situations.
And to
It's
be
never
honest, also,
bad.
I can like critique like this, you know,
Mhm.
like I can come up with ideas really like structure, like I can see broken manuscripts and
Yes.
um I can, it's just something that I can help with, you know, so like
Mhm.
I'm a person that can help. So who
Yeah.
would you go to if your car was broken? Someone who could fix your car. Um I'm just good at fixing broken stories. Like
Right.
it's just my special talent.
Mhm.
So you need
Mhm.
to find someone that can help you do that.
Sure.
And you would be surprised. And sometimes they're like, oh my gosh, my story is so good now. And I'm like, that you like, they'll say I did it. And I'm like, it was there. We had to just dig it out, but it
Sure.
was there.
Yep,
I'm
it
like,
was there. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, and someone whose job it is to do that, again, they're coming at it differently. They're looking for, when I was critiquing manuscripts too, my eyes were open for the cracks, you
yeah,
know,
you
when I
knew
was
what to
reading it.
look for.
And that's what you're looking for. And sometimes if someone, like I said, especially if they're a friend, they're kind of hoping they don't see the cracks because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So it's just a
Right.
slightly different
But
perspective when you're.
it also goes to background. Like,
Mhm,
I have a lot of background and money invested in my knowledge. And, you know, a lot of times your friends are just where you are at.
mhm,
They don't have that. They don't have the tools necessarily or the experience to tell you what you need to know.
mhm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, I'm going to get to a few more questions here before we sign off. We've got lots of them. Ba, 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 ba. Do you did you submit to more than one publisher at the same time?
Simultaneous submissions,
Mhm.
yes, because we all get old and die.
Thank you. Very true. And if you're new to this
Except,
business,
like I
not
told you my
joking.
last one I didn't. But that was because, when I get that feeling that I know, so I don't always get it for every manuscript. But my last book that I just sold, I really thought it was perfect for this publisher. It's not been announced yet. I only sent it there.
Mhm,
But I really thought they were gonna take it, so I was like, "Why am I gonna send to other people and have to, like, weed through other, messages or then contact them and tell them it's sold when I know I think it's gonna sell here."
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Right. Someone asked, as a critiquer, do you ever refer, once you critique a manuscript and you think it's ready, do you ever refer them to a specific editor or agent?
Um, yes.
Mhm,
I do, and I've gotten people published that way, but it cannot be expected. I will tell you if something's ready and I know where it should go, I will say it, you
mhm,
know? Or y- if I say it's ready and then the person says, "Do you have ideas?" I will say it too.
mhm,
If I have an idea, or sometimes I'll say, "Let me think about that." I do consultations, hour consultations where I go over manuscripts. It's kind of like a critique, a back and forth critique where I'm critiquing and making comments and talking to you at the same time. And I have some that, like, I've had a second consultation, maybe like one or two critiques, and then the consultation, and I'll be like, "This is ready," and we'll use the rest of the time to figure out where it might be sent.
mhm. Okay.
But yeah, if I can think of a place, I am going to say it because I am very happy to help and I am very happy to be someone's fairy godmother. Um, I was going to use that as my business name, but then I thought expectations, everybody's going to want that magic fix and not want to work. Where
Right.
the picture book mechanic really, the connotation of it is that someone's going to go under the hood and tell you what's wrong, and then you're gonna have to, like, invest in it,
Absolutely.
time, your own time, and
Yep.
energy.
Yep. Okay. I think it's a great name. I think it conveys
Thank you.
exactly what you want. So we had a question kind of related to that. Investing, in your career is an excellent point, but what if you can't afford to do that?
um See, that's where I love Rate Your Story.
Mhm,
um because honestly, I know, like, it's like a well, no, I think it's 175 if you've never been a member, which is discounted for early bird. But it comes out with the contest entry, it's like $8.75 a manuscript. I mean, it's something.
mhm,
I also, my critiques are very inexpensive. I know a number of people who either have no books or one book that charge like 125.
mhm,
So, and I wouldn't recommend skimping either. Like, I just am cost effective. I'm not super cheap like 25, but I just know everybody, so I don't want to be too high and outprice myself from the people that I know need it. You know what I mean? So I'm
mhm,
kind of like my heart, like, but don't skimp. Get somebody you know is good, who has a lot of background, who sold books, and do what you can. If it's something like Rate Your Story, if it's somebody who's a good critiquer that you can afford. Oh, I'm always giving away consultations and critiques. I just did one in Full Writing Frenzy. I usually do it in Susanna Hills. I'm doing in Rate Your Story right now. If you tweet, like if you there's like a thing about the registration, and if you retweet it, then you're in a drawing for 1 hour consultation with me, or 1 hour consultation with Linda Joy Singleton, who you know because she
Oh,
did a
yeah.
video for you,
Yes.
um, or 2 books. So like there's ways to win.
Yes. So that's great to know. And kind of getting plugged into the writing community and learning about these things, I think is really important. I think at some point, I understand not being able to invest, and that's, we've all been in positions like that in our lives.
Oh,
And
one
so,
other thing with that though, I do what I call tune-ups for those people. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. So it's $10, and I'll do 20 minutes like in a group, and sometimes I'll do them personal. But it really has to be 20 minutes, but it's $10, and I will meet with you on Zoom and go over your manuscript. And if that's if
great.
you know I've had people like just do the one, and even if we don't finish, they come back for another one in 2 weeks, and then we start, and like kind of seeing how far we go till we get to the end. There's a person, we just did it, and we flew through the manuscript, and she was like, oh my gosh, after all that, it's like a picture book. So she chopped it away at it in manageable financial increments
That's
and
great.
yeah, so there's
Okay.
that too.
So there are options. That's really good to know. I was going to say, sometimes you have to look for these less expensive options and kind of piece them together. And so that's really good to know that you offer that. Um, and then of course, if there's a conference you want, or a workshop you really want to purchase, planning that out. I mean, it's like with any other business investment. You can't always set up a rent office space right away. Sometimes you got to work out of your spare
Well,
bedroom.
you also have one that we're doing for the title escapes me right now, but like the building blocks of a picture book,
Mm-hmm.
that's free.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I
our
mean,
picture book blueprint one.
yeah, that we're
Yeah.
having in January. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody should go to that. To be honest, I'm going, and I would have been. I go to these things for reminders,
Mm-hmm.
for refreshers, to refill my toolbox, to sharpen my tools. So,
Right.
um, what date do we have that again?
I can't remember. It's in the middle of January.
Well, they they could look, and we'll post the link. It's in the Rate Your Story newsletter for sure, the date and
Yeah.
the registration. But there's something that's not going to cost, that they're going to come away from it with takeaway value that's going to help their revisions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was a great question. And I just want to get to one or two more here because we're
Okay.
getting late, but I thank you for your time here. Um, let's see. Uh, okay, so you said earlier that about trying to make your work better than something out that's already out there on a similar topic or in a similar vein. How do you do that? How do you make yours better? So what are some of the things that you kind of try to focus
I
on in
guess
your work?
my good example for that could be like Hedgehog's 100th Day of School or Moldilocks. So I read all the books, and I wanted it to be different, like first of all, a different story,
Mhm.
so a lot of the 100th Day of School books were like this, the same. So I'm like, okay, if they already have that, they're not going to want me to add to the pile. So I just kept reading, and then you start to see like, oh, they don't have something like this exactly. So what I did was, like, I kind of combined a craft with mine, and I love the I get by with a little help from my friends from the Beatles, and I was just playing the Beatles, so I was like, oh, I should do that. I should put that in there. So what I had is, um, it's the 100th day of school, and Spike doesn't know what project to make, which is a problem a child's gonna identify with and connect with.
Mhm.
So they're gonna follow him in, and then he's gonna go to his friends, and his friends are gonna be doing a project, which is a built-in project idea. And they're going to say, but I have these, you can have them, maybe you could make something with this. So as he goes through, he collects all of these objects, and at the end, I don't know if I want to ruin it, but he puts them together and he makes his project. So even though they help him, because remember that agency thing, that the main
Right.
character should have agency, they don't solve the problem, they just give it to him, and he has to figure out what to do with that. So
Mhm.
it had like these extra levels, and especially like there wasn't one where like all the friends helped the one person get make the project. So I knew I had it on that, and then I had, like, he made this cute little thing that ties in, so this little like craft at the end, and then my ideas were like pretty good, pretty
Mhm.
fun ideas. So a kid can take this book and go, okay, I'm going to do these ideas. So I just knew that it stood out.
Right.
Um,
So you're looking really at little plot devices or unique details that you haven't seen in any of the other books. That's one good way to do it.
yeah, so
Uh,
we'll give a quick example with
mhm.
Moldilocks. So I wanted to do a Goldilocks story, like really bad, and because um, I I didn't like that she's like a trespasser. She's like an intruder, and there was just things I'm like, I don't like this story, like I want to redo it. And then I'm like, okay, so how can I do it? And then there's like Goldilocks and the three pandas, there's Goldilocks and the three dinosaurs, there's, I, I was like finding all these variations and reading them and being like, oh, there's so many, and like, what am I gonna do if I'm gonna do this? And then I noticed there was no monsters.
Mm.
So I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, Moldilocks, of course, rhymes. So I'm like, "Oh, it has to be a zombie," even though at the time I didn't like zombies, and now I do. But I'm like, how fun it could be, a Frankenstein, a mummy, so it could tie into Halloween. And then I just kept rolling with it, and I'm like, "Okay, now it needs a theme that none of the others had." So I made it that she wasn't an intruder. She was the answer to their nightmares, which means prayers, and that she like kind of fulfilled a family that was missing something. So I'm like, none of the stories that I read touched upon that.
Mhm.
So that was another one, to be honest, that I knew was gonna sell.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you had some great themes in there and a real different take on the story. So that's
I
great.
hope that answers the question, but this all comes from like reading and seeing where the cracks are, like the term you used before, and making sure that this is going to stand out
Mhm.
amongst all the others that are out there and that are good.
Mhm. Mhm. Great. Okay, last question, then we'll let you go.
Okay.
Getting back to the poll there, how do you know when you should just give up on a story and move on? Is there a way to kind of get that answer?
Hmm. I I wouldn't say never. I think Rob Sanders has a story that he dug out and redid, like, oh my gosh, like 10 years later. But
Mhm.
I think if it's not working, that you should give up and put it away. It's not like dead, like it's not irrecoverable. It's on your computer, and when you get better skills, or if
Mhm.
when you get that revelation idea, it'll be there.
How do you
So,
know when it's dead? Is it where you just can't solve the problem that needs to be solved to make it better? Or is it after submitting it to 10 or 15 places and getting
well,
4 rejections?
see, I don't believe in rejection bingo in those things. I'm very
Mhm.
opinionated on that. I
Right.
think if you got 15 rejections and didn't revise it,
Hmm.
that's like, no.
Yeah.
So, hmm,
I
that's like a really
It's a very hard question. It's hard to know. Yeah. I was hoping you could tell me
well,
what the
first
answer.
of all, if it doesn't pass some gatekeeper, like, and I'm not talking about your friends in a critique group, but like Rate Your Story or a professional critiquer or a conference critiquer, um, and if it like really comes in low, then maybe like try something else.
Mhm.
I also recommend, even if you have this story that you really want to do, put it away because you will grow by leaps and bounds by forcing yourself out of that story box with that one story. And then you could come back to that story and breathe life into it. I love the Frankenstein motif. Frankenstein, the true story, is one of my favorites. You want to be able to come back to a dead story
Mhm.
and breathe life into it, but I guess let it die if it needs to. I don't know.
You can
Um,
always resurrect it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can. And sometimes like the idea comes like in the unexpected time and you just have to wait for it. You have to go through your life, be open for the time that that key for that story is going to come without banging your head against the wall with that one story. Go write the next story. There's all kinds of ways to get ideas.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, right. And I think putting that distance between yourself and this particular manuscript is probably the most valuable thing you can do, and working on something else,
Yes,
building those
turning your
skills,
sights on something else and
and
letting
coming
that
back.
simmer or
Mhm.
percolate and then going back with the fresh eyes. If you don't have money, like, you can kind of be your own gatekeeper if you read the books, read the articles, and force yourself to be objective, then you can do some of that work. But
Mm.
if you're not an objective person, then you have to be realistic and objective about that.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
You're right. All right. Well, this has been awesome. And I know I got a lot of questions about details of stuff that Lynn Marie talked
can
about
you
in her.
like
Well, I was going to say when we send out the replay, we will put all the links under the replay for Rate Your Story, for your critique service, for our yearly subscription to Children's Book Insider I talked about.
and the
Um,
blueprints
yeah, I wanted to.
webinar, um you can send me the questions that were not answered, and somehow I can post them and Rate Your Story, the general newsletter, which you don't have to be a member, and I do a lot of sharing in that too because I really do love to work
Okay.
with people. And
I'll send them to you, and then you all need to sign up for the Rate Your Story newsletter, which you can do on the website, which
right,
will
and that's free and no obligation.
and no free.
And then I'll use them, and I'll put them in a section and I'll answer them.
Right. And I wanted to mention at the end here, all those questions on the poll that you took, the answers, we specifically created our blueprints to answer those questions. So if you haven't checked them out and you're interested, you can go to this link. We have free trial editions. So you can go check them out and really go through several steps in each blueprint and see if that would help you out. So I just wanted to put that up on the screen there for a minute as well. So, thank you, Lynn Marie. This has been awesome. Appreciate all your
Anytime,
time. Yeah.
anytime, really.
And when is your next book coming out? I know you have one in the works
I
that's
actually have two in the works,
in
but
the works.
one of them doesn't have a date and the other is 2022.
Okay. Well, As we
And I
get
have
closer,
news, but I can't share it.
well, you come back and share that with us. So,
No, I'm happy to come back and especially to talk about my favorite topic, revision. And honestly, if you ever want me to just even like read like sentences and give on the fly feedback, I love that too. So,
all right. Well, cool. We
all
could
right.
we could do that one time. That would be fun. Okay, well, thank you all so much. And thanks for being with us tonight. And we will see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks for having
everybody.
me. Bye.
Bye.